Hello and welcome to the March 15th edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson outside the Statehouse here in Columbia. Well, it was a quick day up here in Columbia, with the House again was out of session because they passed the budget early Wednesday morning and took the rest of the week off. And the Senate was actually in for about 2.5 hours today, doing some perfunctory measures and also some floor debates. And we actually saw them confirm a couple people to various different boards in the state, as well as confirm State Law Enforcement Division Chief Mark Keel to another term. So that was just a few little things that happened today, including Senator Marlon Kimpson, Democrat from Charleston, who took to the Senate well today to chastise Governor Henry McMaster for McMaster's comments yesterday about the National Walkout of School Day movement. You might remember that McMaster chided the movement, saying it was a left-wing liberal attempt to kind of use these students as tools to further an agenda, but Senator Kimpson had a little bit different take on that, and actually he used his time up at the well to push another bill, Senator Sandy Senn's bill, that would make it a crime to threaten violence in schools. Now this is kind of a weird twist of fate because we did see up here in the Midlands yesterday, specifically at AC Flora High School, the sister of Dylann Roof, the mass murderer from the Charleston shooting back in 2015 at Mother Emanuel AME Church. We saw his sister Morgan Roof get arrested for actually making some vague threats and actually possessing a weapon. A knife was in her possession when she was arrested. So very interesting to see that play out, because in this situation she could have been prosecuted, charged rather, under this bill if it was actually in effect as a law. So fascinating debate between Senator Kimpson and Senator Senn on the Senate floor today. So we have that debate right there, and we also have some additional comments from this week where we saw Secretary of Commerce, Department of Commerce Secretary Bobby Hitt actually talk about proposed Trump administration tariffs and how they might affect South Carolina and the economy. And I actually got to ask the governor yesterday about his take on those proposed tariffs. So we have a lot to talk about, even though it was kind of a short day today. So let's get right into it right now with Senator Kimpson's comments from the Senate floor.
I am amazed that the governor would be quick to condemn those students, but yesterday afternoon the sister of Dylann Roof carries weapons on a school ground in Columbia, but I didn't see him or any other candidate who condemned the students for their peaceful protests, condemn Dylann Roof's sister for making threats to commit violence. And I'm glad Senator Senn has a bill to address that. But I would have had a lot more respect for someone to apply it evenly to someone who actually expresses herself with an intent to harm other students and issues racially charged divisive terms.
But are you aware that the current statutes, that these kids who do things like this, who are threatening in particular, who actually just threaten instead of come to school with a knife, but are threatening, the only avenue for law enforcement right now is to take them to magistrate's court, basically, or family court under misdemeanors such as disturbing the schools and assault. Are you aware of that?
You've just made me aware, and I think your bill will address threats, and that's why I supported your bill.
Right. So, but are you aware that magistrates courts really don't have the ability to get students who need anger management or mental health counseling any help? Are you aware of that?
I think your bill addresses that in a way because there's a mental health, the bill was amended to include mental health treatment because that was what came out of judiciary.
It does. And are you aware that the bill is now on the calendar?
The bill is on the calendar.
Thank you.
All right.
And that bill, S431, is now on the Senate floor. Afterwards moved out of the Senate Judiciary Committee this week after receiving unanimous support from all 23 senators on that committee. And like I said, that is 23 senators, which is half of the entire Senate's population. So expect to see that bill moving pretty quick pretty soon. Also, switching gears, I want to backtrack a little bit to some testimony we heard earlier this week from South Carolina Department of Commerce Secretary Bobby Hitt about President Donald Trump's administration's proposed tariffs on aluminum and steel. Now, these have been pretty controversial across the country, and South Carolina has been no stranger to that, especially since it's home to Boeing, a Boeing plant rather. That is, Boeing is one of the biggest exporter of goods in the state and also the country, so could have some major ramifications for Boeing, as well as automakers in the state like BMW, where Secretary Bobby Hitt used to work. So he's familiar with previous tariffs that happened back in 2002 that hit the steel industry. So he had some interesting comments to say to one of the senators on that panel this week about what he thinks that these tariffs might do to South Carolina businesses. And also we got the governor to weigh in on the matter too. You might remember that Governor McMaster is pretty close with Trump, and he's said he's been in conversation with the administration, and also notes that, you know, while it might be good for the country, he wants to make sure that these tariffs are also good for South Carolinians. Here we go right now.
And we are very much engaged in the business of building and exporting automobiles. And as Volvo comes on board, they plan to export about half of their product. Mercedes-Benz vans, not so much. That's more of a domestic product. But basically, as the supply chain for these companies go, they start somewhere down in Costa Rica and they end somewhere around Hudson Bay. So they move all over this continent based on the suitable work for the suitable location and cost and value chain. I mean, it's basically what business does when it has the opportunity to do it. And so there is concern, no one's hair's on fire yet, to be quite blunt. These are all fairly sophisticated companies. They've sort of been here before. If there was, for instance, I was directly involved as a person who had to deal with the steel tariffs in 2002, when during the Bush administration, steel tariffs were put on for 18 months. And it presented some challenges to my old company at BMW, and presented a load of work for me because we needed to get waivers from those tariffs, because there was not steel available in this country that matched the production requirements we had for steel that we put in the car. BMW used all virgin steel, and it used a certain tensile strength. And, you know, all these things don't translate quite as easily as everyone thinks. And the crashworthiness of a car is based on the strength of the metal. It can get very technical very fast. And so you get into these conversations to try to protect your product. Remember, you have a product liability as well when you put a product on the road. So it gets fairly complicated. We are a free market state, so anything that limits free market could have some impact on us. But so far, it seems to be there's an engagement of discussion going on rather than an imposition that has had direct effect yet. But yes, there's concerns. In fact, it was discussed in my office yesterday by 2 different people, representatives of international companies, about their concern. I can tell you there's been fair traffic in the governor's office from our companies asking, seeking his support for communications into the administration and all about those impacts. Every national article I've read that talked about which would be the states that would have impact if these tariffs were put in at the full rate that were being suggested initially, South Carolina was in that list.
I have been talking to the Trump administration since the administration began about these tariffs, and it's not settled yet exactly what's going to be done, what will be exempted or changed, or what the final impact would be. But I've been meeting with business leaders since the beginning, since I became governor and before, because we're all concerned about the growth of business and the availability of all we need, including infrastructure, to get things done. So we're working on it. We're in conversation right now. That came up when I was with the president when we went down to celebrate Boeing's new plane months ago. We discussed it then, and we're still in conversations about that.
Governor, early this
and what my intent is to do what is necessary to be sure that businesses in South Carolina thrive. There's no doubt that President Trump is taking us in the right direction. We know that by looking at the stock market and jobs and the salaries going up and taxes being cut. And we're moving in the right direction, but we need to be careful and do everything in the right direction.
And just want to do a quick follow-up on a Senate subcommittee action we saw today involving that plastic bag ban bill, H3529, which would prohibit cities and towns across the state of South Carolina from passing plastic bag bans. You might remember some of these municipalities have already passed these bans, such as in Folly Beach, Surfside Beach, Isle of Palms, and most recently the Mount Pleasant City Council is actually moving through a ban right now. So this bill would actually prohibit municipalities from passing these bans, these ordinances. Proponents say that it leads to higher costs essentially, and you know, costs being pushed onto stores like grocery chains and other merchants. And also, you know, we're also seeing some pushback from the plastic bag manufacturing industry. There's actually a manufacturer of these plastics in the PD who says that this bill would actually help save some jobs. But opponents to the bill say that, you know, these plastic bags do get into the environment. They break down, they cause problems in the environment. We see sea turtles ingesting these plastic bags, thinking that they're jellyfish or other aquatic life. So there's been a lot of back and forth on this bill. Expect to see some more activity once this bill gets to the full LCI committee, which should be relatively soon. Also, just want to follow up on what we see happening going into the future this week. Tomorrow, Friday, we are going to see filing open, the 2-week filing period open for political candidates, and that includes all 124 State House representative members up here at the State House, as well as all 7 members of the U.S. House, our congressional delegation from South Carolina, and all 7 congressional districts in South Carolina need to register as well as those that are challenging them. There are plenty of people challenging our incumbents this year. And the gubernatorial office race opens, as well as all the constitutional offices, and also some city and county local races too that you want to check out. So be sure to stick with SCTV throughout the 2018 legislative session and election year as we continue to bring you live updates from the State House up here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, live at 7 p.m. on our Facebook page, SCTV's YouTube page, and my Twitter account at Gavin Jackson. Also, find out what's going on up here by checking out the State House Daybook at sctv.org every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That gives you the agendas, the meeting schedules, state headlines, and other resources, basically so you know what's going on up here, when it's going on, and also what's happening. So we want to keep you informed as much as possible because we know it is difficult to navigate what goes on up here in Columbia. But I'm Gavin Jackson for SCTV. Have a great weekend.